Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining me for this session. Today's session is going to be around automating Azure Data Factory and Databricks. And yeah, welcome. Let's get stuck into it. Some of you may know our history, which is basically we created a language called Biml, which is a language where you declare or you describe your data warehouse assets, and you can build your own templates. We've been working quite hard and building, as a company, building templates that actually works on all the different platforms, as many as we can. And what I'm going to show you today is effectively our Azure Data Factory and Databricks automation side of things. So data integration solutions, effectively almost all data warehousing has at some layer a source that you want to either ingest or process into a target. Now that's basically data warehousing or data integration at its lowest level. So with BimlFlex, effectively, it's a little bit of a pick and mix, right? You say, okay, well, I want to have data coming in from this source over here, which could be anything really, that is supported by Azure Data Factory effectively. And then you want to also in BimlFlex, you can say, well, I want to use Azure Data Factory to do integration, or I want to use integration services or Databricks. So you have these options. So you can mix and match. So if you have some stuff that needs to be processed in a certain way, you use that and some stuff in another way. And then your target, again, we're adding more and more support for different things, but effectively we do specialize and focus on the Microsoft stack. So you can say, I want to target a SQL Server. We have customers that has target Synapse, and now they are migrating because all of their metadata drives the solution. Now they are migrating to Databricks. So that's one of the benefits of using an automation tool that works off metadata, is that you don't know what you need to do in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. There may be vendor X coming out, or Microsoft might come up with, and I know that they are bringing some new cool Synapse stuff out, and then you want to go from managed instance to Synapse. Now, if you have to rebuild all of your code, that could take months or years. If all of your solutions are working off metadata, within BimlFlex, you literally just change the switch and say, I don't want Data Factory, or I don't want to use SSIS, I want to use Data Factory, or I don't want to use managed instance or SQL database because I now need to use Synapse or Databricks or even Snowflake if you want. So that's at the lowest level. This is kind of just another slide. Just actually showing you the different integration stages, right? So we support, obviously, the data coming out of your source system. It gets landed. Now, in the context of Databricks, which is what this is all about, it gets landed in a data lake. And then you can also persist that in its rawest form. So in other words, you can create like the data came in, we put it in a Parquet file or other file, but Parquet is probably the most accepted one for Databricks. We put it in a Parquet file, it's whatever we got, as in the raw format that you got, and we want to just keep a copy of that for however long you want. Then the next stage is it goes into the first layer, which is really only, we're going to go today just probably to that layer because we only have 20 minutes. But what you then do is we take that data that was just landed, we process that into Databricks using the normal staging and persistent staging, operational data store. So the data comes in, we use Databricks with the sort of row hash diffing to determine the delta, and that delta can either be merged using the Databricks merge statement, or it can have an insert-only architecture where history is persisted. In other words, data change, inserted, so that staging table gets bigger. It's called persistent staging. And in Databricks terms, it's probably called your raw, your bronze layer, right? Then you can get into your next layer, which we don't have time today, and that's where you will apply some form of integration or data modeling. Some customers, we have customers using Data Vault methodology. So this is modeling methodologies. So they use Databricks or they use normal data warehouse, third normal form. So that's the modeling technology, but effectively you have that layer and then you have your dimensional, your data mart layer. So all those layers are supported within the Databricks suite and all our other solutions. So which makes it portable, right? Again, if you need to change your mind or if you're moving between one environment or the next and you're not sure, we have had a number of customers doing that. So the BimlFlex solution architecture, as I'm going to show you the tool, just so you have an overview of how it works and how it hangs together, because I'm only going to be able to show you portions of it in the time we have available. But effectively, once we get into the solution, you're going to connect to a source system or it could be files, you could connect to Parquet files, and you want to bring that metadata in. So we're bringing that metadata in, and then using which gets stored in our database, our metadata database, and then we have the application. And with that application, you could do a number of things. You could do business modeling, which is effectively the business saying, this is what our data looks like. And then you can also take that business model and hook it into a data vault model or a data mart model, and you will get some lineage. Now, we're not a data lineage tool, so don't think that, oh, this is like Purview or any of those things. What we have is we have the lineage of the metadata that you have connected together. So you can visualize how my data is going to flow based on what you've provided into our tool. We do not go out and do data lineage discovery. Just want to make sure that that's understood. So once you have all of that metadata and your data models ready and available, you would then go into the next phase, which is, okay, I now know what I've done. I've described how I want my data to move and possibly how I want to transform it. I've added business rules and business logic. It then goes into sort of, I would say, so down the bottom is what I would call design time, right? This is where you're going to go design your solution, and at the top is your runtime. Now, this is where you go, and the metadata is then read or fed into our build engine, which effectively applies it to our templates that we've written, and the templates are written in a language called BIML, which stands for Business Intelligence Markup Language, which is effectively just a templating language. And we then apply all that metadata to the templates that Verigence has built and maintained. Now, one of the key things to know about that is when you're looking at a tool that provides you with templates and sort of metadata-driven approaches, quite often one of the first questions that we ask is, well, hold on, what if I've got something special or different, bespoke or custom? Now, the good thing about that is that templating language is also available to you to go and say, I need to write a little fragment of code, a very hypothetical, but a real-world example, because one of our customers is doing is, at the end of their data factory pipeline, they want to send an email if something had happened. We do all the sort of logging, error handling and logging inside of our pipelines, but they specifically want to go, if there's an error, go and send an email to a specific DevOps team, right, or data ops team. So what they did is they wrote a little piece of code, 5 or 10 lines of code, which is basically in the template language. And then with our extension point ability, which is basically throughout our framework or our solution, you have these little placeholders where you can inject things into it. So effectively, whatever you could manually do inside of Data Factory for this one package or for 10 packages or for all my packages, you can go and say, inherit this piece of code and inject it everywhere. So basically, with about 5 or 10 lines of code, they were able to add that sort of error handling to all their packages. So it's very extensible, and I suppose you can customize it. Now, one of the other important things to know about the difference between what we do and probably a lot of other vendors that's in the data warehouse automation space, or at least most of the ones that I know about, is that the difference between BimlFlex and them is that we actually will, with all of that metadata in our templating, we then generate 100% standard code. So if the code that was generated through BimlFlex for Databricks or for Data Factory will look exactly the same as if they were hand-built by a developer. In other words, there is absolutely no difference between the JSON we create and the one you would create in Data Factory. And I'll show that to you in a second. That process would mean that you can check all of that generated artifacts into your source control, and you can run your normal DevOps process. In other words, there is no change for you to say, oh, I'm using this new tool, I need to have a whole new change management or DevOps process. It all just goes into your GitHub or whatever repository you're using. And then the runtime is also quite important to know. As you can see there, again, we do all of those different runtimes, but the runtime is, again, completely disconnected from our applications. In other words, that code will run in that environment. So if you're a consultant or a company that says, okay, hold on, we're going to use a tool for 3 months to build 100 pipelines, you can then stop the subscription, and that 100 pipelines will run forever, if that makes sense, right? So it's a subscription-based model that you can buy a month of our tool, build as much stuff as you want, and then pause the tool or stop it. The metadata is yours, it's in your environment, and then 6 months later you can say, okay, hold on, we've got another piece of work, start it up again, build a whole bunch of stuff off, and stop it again, right? Traditionally, we don't get customers doing that a lot because, as soon as they start using our tool, they just keep building stuff out, right? But that's also important to know between the difference between what we do and what probably a lot of other people do. And I'm going to go into the demo now. So let me put my old people's eyes on. So I'm going to go into BimlFlex. So this is BimlFlex here. No? Did it not change?
No, still on PowerPoint.
Let me close PowerPoint. Okay. So can you guys see that all right? Now zoom in a little bit here. Okay. So this is BimlFlex, our metadata application, and this is where you would do a lot of the metadata management. As you can see here, it's like using any other application. There's very little technical stuff happening here, and that's by design. Because, as I said, as a data warehouse team, what you want to do is you want to focus on your business rules and your business logic and describing how your data needs to move from A, B, and C. You don't necessarily want to learn SSIS, ADF, Databricks, all of those things, right? So if you're in a team or if you're in a situation where you're saying, we need to do a whole bunch of stuff, we really cannot learn all of these different languages or technologies, this is really where this comes into play. So I've already set this up. And I'm going to build this out in a second, but what you would do, a normal workflow for just getting the data into Databricks, and this is going to look a little bit too good to be true, and it probably will, but it really is as simple as that. Imagine you're connecting to, you have a position where you have to bring 100 tables, 1,000 tables, and just dump them into Databricks, right? So you're not going to do nothing with them. You just need to bring a whole bunch of stuff into your data lake or into Databricks. What you would do is you would set up a connection to that system, Oracle, DB2, doesn't really matter, a system, and you would hit the import metadata button. You would connect to that database, and you would choose either filter using the filters at the top here, or you would choose whether you want one table or 3 tables, and you would bring that in. You would import metadata, and once you've imported the metadata, you get, we have quite a number of sort of accelerators or I would say lightweight data modeling tools. It's not a full-blown data modeling tool, but you can then go into the tool and review and look at your metadata, and possibly at this stage or later on, you could go and start putting some information in here. You could go and say, well, we have what's called a source expression and a target expression in how will it work? Well, if you're extracting your data using Azure Data Factory, the source expression will be on the source query, and the target expression will be on the Databricks, right? So run there. So if you wanted to run like a trim command, you would just go and do, say, trim at this, which basically says this column. So that means that all your expressions will be aware, it's context aware. If you're using the word at this, it's this column. If it's on a table, it's this table, right? So you can kind of write a lot of code that's reusable because you don't have to say this column name, right? So you could use copy and pasting commands. So, you can save that. One of the nice things that I like about this is because a lot of development tools, it's hard to find out what transformations are running where, because you've got to either go and open up the Data Factory pipeline or the Databricks code. With this, you really just go and say, okay, I want to go and look at my customer table here, and I'm going to look at the columns, and I'm going to look at the expressions. So all of a sudden, I can see where there's expressions in my metadata. I don't have to go and open code or try and figure out what's happening where. You get a quick overview. I'm going to just switch to another project just to give you an idea, and then I'm going to build it, and I'm going to show you some of this. This is basically Databricks of Data Vault, but that's not the reason I'm showing it. One of the other things that we do is once you start getting past this sort of staging layer, and you've built more things, again, I'm just going to use the customer here. Once you get past that layer, because data warehousing isn't just about staging your data, but then that's when you start doing data vault modeling or data warehouse modeling, and all of a sudden, again, you can see how your data is moving. So you're getting a little bit of a feel of, okay, I'm taking this table, and I'm splitting in all of these things. And once you've done all of that modeling, again, a lot of the work that you'll do, the customers that use BimlFlex spend about 80% of their time in this tool, and about 20% of their time deploying, managing that kind of stuff, right? So just bear it in mind. But effectively, if you just need to do that first layer, just importing your metadata, making sure it's all clean, you can then go ahead, and the next couple of things I'm going to show you can all be automated through continuous integration, right? So I'm going to click some manual buttons here just to show you what could happen. We also have our BimlFlex Studio development tool, which is effectively where you can preview what that metadata is going to look like, right? It's going to be, well, we're going to create this data factory here, and it's going to have these link services, and it's going to have these sort of data sets and these pipelines and stuff. And the backend code of this is all obviously based in Biml, but this is just a visualization of what the metadata is going to get turned into. Once you're happy with that, this is also where you would also use this to develop those extension points I spoke about. So this is where your technical developers will come in and say, hey, I need to tweak this, or I need to customize this because our requirements are a little bit different. And once that's all done, you effectively hit the build button, which goes away, again, using the metadata, passes that into our template. And you'll see this is my laptop, but it does take a little bit of time, but this is a small solution. So it builds in about 10, 20 seconds, hopefully. But effectively, this is now where it's going to create all the JSON files and all of that kind of stuff. Once this is done, I'm hoping it's a little quicker here. Once this is done, I'm just going to take you into VS Code and show you that it basically effectively is all of that standard code that if you are a data factory developer or if you do Databricks, you look at it and go like, yeah, that looks familiar, right? So there's no surprises there. While this is building, I'm going to go ahead. Okay, now there we go. Once it gets past it, so that's built this entire solution. So this is going to go ahead, and it's created a number of packages for me. And sorry, I don't know where my mouse is. And lastly, over here, again, so here are all the Databricks packages that was created. But I want to go ahead and not show you all of this because I actually want to. Just got to find it real quick in the build. I'm going to just go and this is again this is what we use for our continuous integration automation. Just PowerShell scripts that says, hey, go do this. Let's go build. So when we have our when we put this in Azure DevOps pipeline, so what this script that I'm running now is going to take all of that output I've just done, and it's going to move it into my repository, right? So now here I have the 400 things that was changed, right, from metadata. So I'm not going to show you all of this stuff here. Well, I can. As you can see, that's a Databricks Python saying, hey, this changed from this to this. There's I don't know if anybody here is using Data Factory, but what just happened this week, don't tell Microsoft, but, well, if they're here, I'll tell them because it's their mistake. What happened this week is Microsoft changed one of their Data Factory settings from optional to mandatory, the retry statement. I don't know if anybody got bit by that, but our customer called us and said, hey, this thing all your Data Factory scripts all worked yesterday, they're all broken today. And we were like, well, really? How did that happen? And we then found out that Data Factory got updated and this was a setting that had changed. We shipped a fix for the customer that same day. They rebuilt everything and deployed everything and it was fine, right? So again, there is benefits in sometimes you do everything right and you still get bitten by, us not having governance over that. But effectively, you go ahead here, you say whatever your message is, you commit that, and I'll sync that up. The result of all of this is that when I go into Data Factory, all of these pipelines, and it could be, we really, without a word of a lie, we have customers that has thousands upon thousands of Data Factory pipelines, and equally as many Databricks notebooks, but that's the Data Factory pipeline there. As you can see, you have full fidelity. Anything that you can do in Data Factory manually, you can automate through our tool with those extension points. So it's not like, oh, hold on, I need to do a Databricks, Azure function call. You could do it. The Databricks flip side of the Databricks is this is all in a GitHub repository, but effectively from there, you'll have your notebooks. There's a Python script that checks whether it's a full or delta load. And then from there, we have decided, and our customers are very happy, that we decided to build all the code using SQL because most data engineers understand and can read SQL and can follow what's going on in our notebooks. So all of these notebooks, and that's just a tiny solution here, right? I mean, this is just AdventureWorks with a bit of Parquet files and stuff in here to show all the functionality, has generated all of this code. And that's it. Really. So yeah, as I said, if you are in the process of doing either Data Factory or Databricks, please come to our stand if you haven't already. We'll provide you with information. We're not a spamming company. I don't really like writing that many emails, so I'm not going to send that many emails. But effectively, we'll provide you emails. You can always unsubscribe if you don't feel like it. We also have some swag left. Hop over. If you just want to grab it and not talk to us, feel free to do that. I don't want to take it back to Australia. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the session.